Greetings to all of our ACDA Eastern Region members. My name's Chris Kiver, and I'm the president of the Eastern Region. And I'm delighted this afternoon to be able to talk to Pat Guth, who is the conductor of the Bucks County Women's Chorus in Pennsylvania. So, firstly, welcome, Pat.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's so great to have you, and we're grateful for the knowledge you're going to impart to our ACDA members. So, first of all, how about if you tell us about the Bucks County Women's Chorus, and that could be, your role in the organization, how long you've been with them, performance highlights.
Sure. Sure. So I'm actually the founder of the chorus, and we started in 2012. So we just celebrated our 10th anniversary, even though we missed that like 15 months in the middle there for the pandemic. So we are a currently 95 voice choir. We're actually the largest community choir in the area. We range in age from about, I think 27 is our youngest member, and our oldest member is 83.
Great.
So we do SSA and SSAA stuff. So we have a nice balance of about 25 people on each part. Um, I'd say the bulk of the group is probably from the 50 to 70-year-old range, probably because those are the people that have time to spend on extra activities, don't have kids growing up and so forth. And I think, we've got a really good mix of people who've sung all their lives, as well as people who this is their first foray into choral music. It's something they always wanted to do. And like I said, didn't have time to do it while they were, raising children or something like that. So I do it all. We actually set this up. This is kind of unusual. This is not a nonprofit organization. So we set this up as a for-profit organization. So I don't have a board. So, and I'm not a control freak, but I kind of do it all. I set up the concerts, and so forth. Uniforms, whatever, pick the music. And we have a monthly tuition. So they pay a monthly tuition. Right now it's $45 a month, or they can pay annually and they get somewhat of a discount. And for that, they don't ever have to sell tickets or fundraise or anything. That tuition covers all of our annual expenses and then some.
Right.
So we're able to pay for our venue that where we practice, pay for our accompanist, any extra instrumentalists, and so forth. So it's worked really well for us. It was something we weren't sure about. And I had done choirs with boards and wasn't always happy with the way things turned out. So we thought we'd give this a try. And it's actually really worked well for us.
That's good. That's good. So, how do singers, particularly when you have that wide range of ages, how do they hear about you? Are you actively recruiting?
We do actively recruit. I was really fortunate the first time we ever advertised when I decided that I wanted to do this choir, because there were no women's secular choirs in the area at all. Well, there was one in Philadelphia. There was a feminist choir that's pretty well known, but nothing up here in Bucks County. So I wrote press releases to various newspapers, and I was just fortunate enough that the largest paper in the area, the Bucks County Courier-Times, picked up on my press release and called me and wound up running a feature story. So absolute luck, that they did that. And within about 5 or 6 days of that story coming out, I had 115 phone calls
Wow.
of interest. And at the first rehearsal, we had 81. And I think the lowest we've ever been is 75. And that was right after the pandemic, when people weren't sure they wanted to come back and sing together. But yeah, I'm really kind of nutso about PR. I make sure I put press releases out about everything.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
go ahead.
well, I'd like to circle back to more of the kind of the business side of things, because one thing I shared just before we started recording is, for a start, ACDA does have a lot of student members.
Mhm.
I think sometimes in college, when particularly when training young students, um, it might be that we focus on sort of education positions, and it's good for the young upcoming conductors to know that community choirs are an important part of the choral landscape. But then, of course, what they don't get to do is train and learn much of the business element that's required. So,
Right.
some,
Yeah,
some
my husband and we own a music studio. I mean, a teaching studio. So we've always we've had that set up, and QuickBooks and all those things. So that was really helpful when we decided to do this. And you're right, we don't have a music or a business for musicians course, in our college study. So we really had to do some digging. We found out, for example, that QuickBooks is the best thing for us to use, to keep clients. Each singer is a client, and we know what each singer plays, or each singer is a customer, I guess you would say, and we know what each person pays, and whether they've paid for their music or their tuition or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If we think about some of the musical elements for now, again, I am struck by the wide range of ages. And if I recall rightly, you've sung at the White House.
We've sung twice at the White House Holiday Open House. Yep.
Yeah, that's great. So for a non-audition group, what kind of repertoire do you perform, and how do you determine what to choose for them?
So we do, from September to December, we do holiday repertoire. So we usually rehearse from second Monday after Labor Day up until the beginning of December, and then we got concerts scheduled throughout December. Most of our stuff, I would say, is what I would call octavos in church choir, 3 to 5 minute pieces. For the holidays, we do secular, sacred, multicultural, and so forth. Then in January, we start another repertoire, a series of pieces, and it's either themed or not themed. We've done it both ways. And also, pretty much 3 to 5 minute pieces. We've got, spirituals, folk songs, standard show tunes, light classical. We do a real variety. This season, for example, we're doing stage and screen. So everything's Broadway show tunes or movie tunes. But we've done much more difficult stuff. We've done themes that are a little bit more ethereal and not so, cut and dry. So, I really try to challenge them. When I look at music, of course, I have to look at range, because I don't have first sopranos that are going to hold a high C for 12 beats or whatever. You have to look at range. I'm a big stickler about decent text, good text. So I want good text, and just something I think they will enjoy, because I do, as a community choir, I do have to keep them entertained. I hate to use that word, but I do. I have to keep them coming back again and again, again and again.
Sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I'm sure that part of your rehearsal process must focus on building both vocal and literacy skills. How do you go about those particular issues?
Yeah, so absolutely. So choral warm-ups obviously are important. I love James Jordan's The Choral Warm-Up. I pull from that a lot. He's one of my favorite conductors. Just like everybody else, I design my warm-ups to help them with the repertoire in particular. As far as literacy, we did try solfege once, and that kind of went over like a lead balloon. But actually, the pandemic really helped us, helped to give us time to increase literacy, because we were able to do online music reading classes, music theory classes. We had guest clinicians come in and do some vocal technique things and so forth, things that with a 2 hour per week rehearsal, we don't always get to concentrate on. And then after the pandemic, we actually continued doing some of that stuff.
Good.
That, Zoom was a good thing. But now I would say, whereas maybe half of our choir didn't read music, I think that number's been greatly reduced, thanks to those sessions.
Yeah, yeah, that's terrific. And then do you have things like, part learning tracks or something like that? Or
We do, yes, we use Choral. Actually, I think it's called choraltracks.com. Matt Curtis, if you're not familiar with him, those are great. And again, because we only have 2 hours a week, they can take these home, download them on their phone or computer, and work at home. And I would say, they are optional, but I would say probably more than 3/4 of the choir opts to buy them. They cost a whopping $20 a year for each person. And the only people that don't really buy them are those who are fairly accomplished and can bang out notes on the piano or whatever. Yeah. So, but almost everybody else uses them, and I've seen them make a huge difference.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah.
So again, I'm fixating a little bit on that wide range of ages. So,
Ages.
yes, so of course you have a vast array of vocal issues to address, and so um, how are there any particular sort of go-to warm-ups that you will repeat or that you find particularly helpful for whether it's breathing or accessing?
Well, yeah, I was going to say breathing is a huge thing because many of these people came in not even thinking about the connection between breathing and singing. And we've worked a lot on breathing. So that's always like, the first 3 to 5 minutes of warm-ups always has to do with breathing. And do we get people that can't sing well? Yeah, we do. We do. But then we have to figure out how to address that. And I found that the best way to do that is to get that person or persons in with a peer member who is a very strong singer. For example, we have a group of altos that took in a couple other altos and who they knew were struggling, and they meet weekly and they work with the tracks. And this person is now a decent singer,
Yeah.
now match pitch and so forth. So I think they're less intimidated going to a peer than coming to me and asking for help. But if I hear a problem, like sometimes I'll hear someone singing an octave lower or whatever, I try to figure out who that is and match them up with somebody. And, there's delicate ways to do that. Hey, so-and-so practices every week, with these altos, would you like to join them? And yeah, and usually that works. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I think I'm hearing is almost like a buddy system kind of a thing.
Yeah, almost like the buddy system. And we do have choir mentors actually. So when a new person comes in, they can be matched if they want to. They don't have to, but they can be matched with a choir mentor that just helps them navigate the whole thing. Because we are a huge group when you walk in for the first time and there's 90 other people sitting there at that first rehearsal. It can be like super intimidating, even though we're not really an intimidating group at all. But the mentor really helps the new person navigate that.
Yeah. And so again, with the warm-ups, do you have a go-to warm-up that you find really helpful for any particular issue?
Well, we do, I don't know if it's a particular one, but we work a lot on unifying vowel sounds. And I think maybe it's a Philadelphia thing, but I'm just as guilty. I say, go walk the dog, so we work a lot on warm-ups with unifying vowel sounds. And it's funny, we were doing something the other night and it had a beautiful ooh word in it, and it was elongated for maybe 12 beats. And it was so beautiful that I stopped them and I said, did you hear that? All those warm-ups we've been doing, finally worked. They finally worked. You're making that beautiful unified vowel sound.
Yeah. And so do you yourself, would you model that sound? Do you talk about how you make the ooh sound or?
I model it for sure. And yeah, when we talk about, just basics, rounded.
Yeah.
I remember I used to tell my children's choir, round like a dime, and if you get it right, I used to toss dimes back in the old days. But yeah, I mean basics. Yeah, sometimes there are people who have never sung in a choir there, so they need to learn to blend.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's, one of the wonderful things, isn't it, about organizations such as yours, where um, people can have their first experiences in a safe and encouraging.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why, I always joke, but it's not really a joke that I don't allow divas. And I really don't allow divas. I mean, we've had a few people that come in who've had a lot of choral experience and they'll, say something rude to the person next to them. Or, I mean, I had one lady in the back of the second soprano section who was apparently moving people around and saying, oh, you sit here because you can sing and you sit here because you can't. But if you sit next to her, and I had no idea this was going on until somebody told me. But that's the kind of stuff I just can't allow in a community choir where there's such a wide range of skill.
You remind me, I forget who it was, but it was in a book about choral singing, sort of someone reminiscing, and they made the point that in every choir, there's a choir member who, um, like you're describing, is sort of telling everybody what to do, and they say this position is the junior conductor, and it's often self-appointed.
That's a very good point. Yeah,
But
and that's, we've only had 3 or 4 of those. They either self-select themselves out because they realize we're not the right group for them, or I have to speak to them and say, this behavior doesn't work here. So either change it or go.
yeah,
And most of the time they decide to go. But again, it's only been a handful of times.
right. And so, in the 10 years that you've been leading the group, do you have a favorite piece, and why is that piece your favorite?
Good question. So I love the pieces that really push the choir to be better. And I think one of those was Tim Andre Arneson's Even When He Is Silent, which I really took a leap of faith to do. And, it was probably our most challenging piece that we've ever done. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful by the end. Um, Personally, I always wanted a choir that could do Ceremony of Carols, and I finally had one. So I never had a church choir that could pull off this little babe. So finally had 90 voices that could pull off Ceremony of Carols, which made me really happy. We really like the choir really likes Dan Forrest's pieces. They really like Kevin Memley. For the poppier stuff, we've done a lot of stuff by Mark Hayes. They like his arrangements. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had even written down a couple that, oh, yeah, there are a couple pieces I think that really speak to who the choir is. We do, very often we break out into Will the Circle Be Unbroken? And the particular arrangement we like is by J. David Moore, and I think it's Fresh Air Music, AYRE. It just kind of represents who we are. One of the lines is, I was singing with my sisters, I was singing with my friends. So it's just kind of us. And then there was another one written by Sarah Quartel called All the Way Home. And it was written for the Radcliffe Ladies Chorus in England, and also talks about what they get from rehearsal and how they feel when they're walking home after rehearsal and so forth. And I think that really represents what we've become. So that's become one of our favorite pieces as well, and we've used it as a closer at a lot of concerts.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a helpful list. Um, and then maybe just putting the musical elements to one side. So, if you were to begin an unauditioned, or any kind of community choir, really,
Mhm.
what are the things I even need to think about before we maybe even get to the first rehearsal? How do we start this thing?
Yeah, well, I think you have to be a conductor who's willing to jump in with 2 feet. I am a person that gets there an hour before and stays until the last person who's lined up to ask me a question at the end of the rehearsal is done. We do social stuff galore. We go out to dinner. We go out to movies. We go to Painting with a Twist. We do escape rooms before the pandemic.
Right?
We've just, I think you have to be willing to be a part of the community. You can't be the conductor that shows up at 7 p.m. and leaves at 9 p.m.
Mhm.
I think that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, yeah. And so you mentioned earlier about in this situation, you don't have a board, but
Correct.
is the idea sort of how much of the business plan do I need to have thought through? Do I need the board if I'm going to use a board? Do I need the board first? Do I need to open a bank account? Do I need to register as a 501c and those if I wanted to be the
Yeah, well, I would think that finding a board and registering, I believe when my husband and I had a nonprofit children's choir way back in the late 90s. And I believe that's what we did first. We hand chose our board, and then came up with the name, registered the name, did the 501c3 things. Yeah. So
Yeah.
this, you get to skip all of that, but you do have to have a superior accounting program. You have to have somebody who's willing to do it, which thank God is my husband. He does that. He does all of that bookkeeping kind of stuff. So you have to be super organized
And so I
on
suppose,
this.
if you don't have a brilliant spouse, then it sort of it would be to sort of, tap the shoulder of people who have
Right,
skills.
I would think so. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That are good with finances, or well, at least good in math at the very least.
Right. Right. So if you think in the again the unauditioned community choir world in particular, what are the things that bring you the most enjoyment that you would urge others to think about forming these groups?
Mhm. I think our travel has been incredible. It has created memories that I will never forget. And I think some of our most memorable concerts have been on those trips. I can remember, for example, and I remember the choir feeling so good about this. We were in Estonia and we sang with a magnificent women's chorus inside of a 14th century building that was just amazing. And they were just, the other choir, they were just impeccable. And one of my choir members went up to the one who was translating most everything and who could obviously speak English the best, and said to the woman, your choir sings like angels. And she turned around and said, yes, but you sing with joy. And I don't think my choir members will ever forget that.
Yeah.
Aside from the beautiful venues, they've just had experiences with other choruses, and we try to do, some sort of outreach while we're away, even if it's like singing in a nursing home or something like that, which we did outside of Vienna. Just meeting other people internationally. And then the group that goes on the trip, we usually have about 50 to 60 travelers total, and usually 40-ish of those are singers. Those people get closer and closer and closer, yeah, community wise. Yeah, so those have been fantastic. The White House, obviously, it was amazing. But we try to do fun things too. We did the Philadelphia Thanksgiving Day Parade, which I think everybody will always remember. It was pretty cool. And actually, in May, for the third time, we're singing with the old 70s rock band Foreigner. We're
Oh,
singing with them when they come to the Philadelphia area, and this is the third time we've done that with them. And all it involves is getting up and singing "I Want to Know What Love Is" on the stage with the band. But those are the kinds of things that make memories,
cool.
and that's what I'm into, making memories for these ladies. Our older ladies, choir for a few of them is the only thing they do during the only social thing they do during the week. And I had one woman who's just had a lot of sorrow in her life come up to me, tell me, the choir has saved my life, literally saved my life. I mean, she had a husband pass away, a son killed in an accident, just terrible things. And she said, if not for the women in this choir and the formation of this choir, I wouldn't be here. And I think that's really what my goal has become for this choir, is just to make it a community, like you said, that's safe for everyone, regardless of skill, experience.
Well, that's a powerful anecdote to finish with today. And Pat, thank you for all that you do for your singers and
Oh,
for
you're welcome.
it's such an important thing, whether it be for musical reasons or for those sort of more social, personal
Right.
reasons. But
Well, thanks for letting me talk about it. I think there are a lot of non-audition choirs in the States, and they're important,
yes,
and I just really like to, stress their importance.
yeah, and just for the people watching, Pat and I are hopefully going to collaborate with I have the Glee Club at Penn State, the TTPB ensemble, and we're hopefully going to get our two groups together because that's an important thing too, combining.
Absolutely. Well, the ladies are very excited about that. Here in Council Rock School District, we jokingly call Penn State main campus, Council Rock West, because so many students go to from our high school to Penn State. So
There you go.
we're
Well,
excited to do that. We have a lot of alumni families.
that's great. That's great. Well, Pat, thank you so very much for your time,
Thanks
and
for having me, Chris.
continued good luck with the rest of the musical season. And we certainly hope that people will enjoy finding out more about your work.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Thank
Take
you.
care.